Hey everyone, this is d.ramirez and welcome back to Raven Studios. In this video, I want to show you a quick look at how I use parallel compression on drums to add punch, energy and excitement without losing the natural dynamics of the kit. This is actually just a small snippet taken from my full top-down drum mixing series where I go deeper into compression, saturation, EQ, tone shaping, and the whole mix process from start to finish. If you want to watch the full series, which is broken down into multiple detailed parts, you can check it out over at theravenstudios.com. All right, let's get into it, and I'll show you how I set up and dial in parallel compression to really make your drums come alive. Okay, so here we are back in Ableton. Now, I'm using the same drum and sort of mix that I've used in a couple of other videos just to show you how this is developing. And now this is part of the top-down drum mixing. If you want to know more about it, head over to theravenstudios.com. So what we've got here is a drum groove. I'm going to play it you without the parallel compression on, and then I'm going to add the parallel compression so you can hear what it's doing. So this is off. On. Off. Okay, look, no difference in level. With it off, 1.54, with it on, 1.5, with it off. Actually, 0.2 of a dB difference. But listen how much sort of fatter and fuller it gets. You can even increase that. Okay, so what have we done here? Let's break it down. And now I'm going to solo the drums so we can hear how this all works. So what we've got here, we've got a chain set up. Now, what is a chain? I'm going to draw you a trusty diagram for this. A chain is enabling you to split it into two signals. Okay, well, you can have as many signals as you like. In this instance, I've got two signals. I've got the dry chain. Okay, you don't just love my diagrams, eh? I've gone for green this time. Hope you like green. Dry chain, and then we've got the compress chain. Okay, and this is one of the beautiful things about Ableton, is it enables you to do these chains. It's not something you can do in all DAWs, but Ableton is great for this. So what I've got here, this is the compression chain, this is the dry chain. Now the dry chain is basically unaffected. Unaffected, I call it UA. The compression is heavily compressed. Now I'm going to draw you a different diagram. Why do we do this? Well, if we split it up again into two signals, the dry chain will remain or retain its original dynamics like this. It looks like a heart rate monitor. But this is your kick drum. All the dynamics are left intact. But the compression chain here, the comp area, compression chain, this will be squashed really like heavily, and the dynamic range will be reduced by a considerable amount, right? And what we do is then we can then mix this into the dry chain. The dry chain is left untouched. Okay, and then this heavily compressed signal can then be mixed into the dry signal. Why does that work? Well, it enables us to have two signals running in parallel with each other, the dry chain and then this heavily compressed chain, which can be just sort of mixed into taste. Okay, because on its own, the heavily compressed chain will sound horrible, and you'll hear in a minute. It's really heavily squashed, and the whole point of it is to squash it to the point where it's so sort of like there's no dynamic range to it. But then when you mix it into your uncompressed signal, into the dry chain, it's going to bring up all of those low details, and all of those sounds that sort of get a little bit lost in there can then be brought up underneath. So it's not affecting the dry signal, but giving you all the benefits of compression. Okay, so this is often preferred when I come to do drum mixing like this. Now, this is top-down drum mixing, meaning what I've got here is a full drum signal on a drum group, and I'm basically working on this within the context of the mix. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's see how this works. Now, you can see here I've got the glue compressor set up, but I'm going to show you how I use this one. This is the UAD 1176LN, okay? And I'm going to solo the compression chain and turn it up really loud as well, okay? So what we're listening to now is just the compressed drums. I'll go over here and we'll hear this and we'll take a listen. I'm going to set it up as well, take off the EQ. So what we've got here, I'm going to put it into all buttons mode, or otherwise known as nuke mode. And you do that by holding shift. 1, 2, 3, 4. Look, I'm going to set that so they're all in together, and that gives you like the heaviest compression you can get. This compressor was famous for its nuke mode. Somebody accidentally pressed all of the buttons once together at one time, and then they were like, oh, wow, holy cow, this sounds like fat as anything. Okay, so, and what we do then as well, we've got the attack and the release. Now, the attack and the release works differently. That is a slow attack, and that is a fast attack. Whereas on normal compressors, say for instance down here, the fast attack is that way, slow attack is the other way. So it's the opposite way around, annoyingly. Okay, so again, this would be a slow release, and this is the fast release. It's the opposite way around. So let's set this up. Now, what we want to do, and well, what I'm going to do in this instance, I'm going to actually remove all the transients. I want and the reason why this compressor is so good, because it's a very fast attack, meaning you will basically take off it's taking off the transients. We've already got the transients in the dry chain. What we want to do is we don't want to emphasize them anymore. We just want to basically bring up all the low level stuff. So I'm going to set that as fast as possible, and then it's the release that I'm going to play with, because the release you'll hear. So, and then I want to get around about anywhere up to 20 dBs, 20 dBs you say, of gain reduction on this compressor. So let's listen to this, and we set that by pushing the input. Sounds horrible, right? Now let's bring the release down, because what's happening is pumping really fast. So I'm going to bring the release down to sort of minimize that pumping and some of the distortion. Now, you can actually open the attack up if you want to, but we'll do that within the context. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring this in. I'm going to mix it with this chain here. Let's call this parallel comp. See if I can parallel comp. Okay, I'm going to mix this into my dry chain. Dry chain sounds like this. Okay, and then we've just heard that really horribly compressed version. I'm going to mix it in. Okay, so listen without. With. Oh, everything just sort of really comes to the surface, doesn't it? It comes from being like, again, I always use the analogy of behind and in front. It goes from behind to up front. All of those low-level sounds within the mix of the drum mix suddenly get brought up in level. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is look at some EQ on the parallel compression chain, because I don't want any more bottom end. What it's doing, if we listen to this, is bringing out the bottom end. Now, we can EQ that, okay? So I want to EQ it, and you can see that I've got the EQ8 set up here. What I'm going to use for the EQ8 is a shelf EQ, okay? Because if I use a low cut, this one, that will create... If I turn that on, that's going to create a phase around the cutoff point, which will sort of sound a little bit phasey with the drums. If you use a low shelf, you'll get a little bit more of a natural musical EQ, which shouldn't, hopefully, introduce any phase issues, okay? So let's listen to it in isolation. Great. Now, I've also got that there. Let's take that off for now. Can you hear it's also making the hats really fizzy as well? Let me turn that up so it's super loud. It's making all those hats super fizzy. I don't want to emphasize that fizzy hat area either. So let's use another shelf on the top. Not that one, this one. Okay, so let's also look at the sort of this area as well and see. Now, there's nothing to stop you sort of EQing out some more of the low mid-range as well if you want to, which can get a little bit sort of bloated. So you can do a little bit of EQ work around there. So what we're doing is we're focusing on the area that we want to sort of increase with the compression, okay? And again, let's do it in the context of the overall drum mix. Like that area is a little bit tubby, isn't it, I would say. Let's bring that down. Very nice. So off. Nice and polite drum groove. I mean, it's quite a minimal drum groove anyway. It's nice and polite. On. Look at that. I'm using the EQ on the parallel compression chain to be able to sort of manipulate the sound of that. Now, in the context of the mix, let's take a listen. Without. With. Now that's a little loud, so let's bring that down. Again, let's start from the bottom and mix it into the context of the song. Top-down mixing, remember. Okay, now what if we do it the other way around? We could actually do the EQ before. So if I put the EQ before the compressor, let's see what we get now. If we listen to the chain on its own in solo, it will affect the compressor in a totally different way, which can sometimes be preferable, because what we're getting here, if we have the EQ before, we're sort of cleaning the signal out first, and then we're not getting the distortion of the compressor because we're sort of bringing down the level a bit, massaging it a bit to taste. So that's after, before, this is after. Listen to that, you get a lot more distortion. So sometimes before the compressor, take out the frequencies you don't want, can actually work. I won't say different, I'd say it's different. So look at that, a lot more punch. Now, there's one more thing I want to try is opening the attack portion a little bit, because that can sometimes emphasize the little clicky sounds. Sometimes you don't want that, but sometimes it's worth a try. Off, it's quite squashed. Okay, off again. On. Okay, so there you go. I hope you can hear how much sort of punch you get into that. So that's how I use parallel compression to give my drums that extra punch and excitement, keeping all the energy of the performance, but with more weight and glue. Now, if you found that helpful, this is just a small part of the full top-down drum mixing series over on the ravenstudios.com, where I break down every stage of the process in detail, from balance and tone, shaping to compression, EQ and final polish. Head over there if you want to dive deeper and take your mixes to the next level. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And please give me a like and subscribe.